Hello guys, welcome back to the Beastie Room. Now today, as promised, we are going to have a little chat about humidity. It's all right, I can feel my thing, it's tickling my chest. We are going to have a chat about humidity and some of the things that seems to confuse an awful lot of people, and not only beginners, even people that have been in the game a long time seem to have a very strange idea of what humidity actually is. So we are going to try and clarify what in actual fact it is and what it does and how it works. Now, as we've said before, humidity is literally, you cannot see it. So the first thing to remember is, how do we deal with something that we cannot see? So as you get on, you will learn and you will see different things in your enclosures that will give you clues as to what's going on. Whether you have a dry enclosure or a moist enclosure, it all depends on the species that you're going to be keeping. And one of the other things that creates problems is the fact that all the care guides and everything else, and you've heard me say this many times, they have specific ranges of what humidity should be alongside temperatures and other things like this. So the first thing we need to understand is that these figures are purely guides. They are not there to be nailed down or chased. You know, if something says we need 70% humidity, it's not going to make a huge amount of difference whether we're literally 5% either side of that. So if we're 65% humidity, that spider is still going to be fine. If we're 70%, 75% humidity, it's still going to be fine. Now, we get an awful lot of leeway depending on what type of spiders we go for. If we're looking at spiders that are very dry environment based, then they are a little bit less tolerant to a higher humidity. It's not to say they can't take it in small doses, but they're less tolerant in a long-term situation. If we're looking at our tropical spiders, they are really tolerant to quite a wide range. I mean, literally anything from down to sort of 50% right the way up to the 75, 80, maybe even higher. So it all comes into play. Now, one thing to remember, if we're going to go into the higher realms of humidity, which, to be totally honest, within our hobby, there is nothing that requires really high humidity. We can get it right down low, which is safer for us as hobbyists because it gives us that little bit more leeway, but it's also safer for our spiders because there's less trouble can be created by it. So we need to look at different things and change the way we see this. So if, how can we go? Right, first things we need to look at is, what about our actual environment that we're stood in now? We are stood in our room in here. Now, at the moment, we've got things turned down a little bit because it's winter time now. So some of our spiders, we've cut the temperature a little bit. One, to save some costs because it's very expensive at the moment. So we're bringing our temperatures down. We've dropped down about 5 degrees or so in here. And it doesn't cause any problem to any of our spiders. Now, one of the things that I want to show you is, if you look on the gauge on the side of the tank, this gauge here is reading the temperature in the room, which is 77.5 degrees Fahrenheit, and the bottom one is 59% humidity. So as I'm standing here now talking to you guys, it actually feels very humid in here. It is really humid, and at this temperature it feels humid. This is the equivalent to standing in a sauna. You know, you feel it on your clothes. You feel damp because it's so warm and humid, and it's all in the air. So we can't see it, we can't do it, but we can feel it on us in a way. You know, we can feel it there. Now, 59% humidity in this room is pretty much enough humidity to maintain any of the spiders that we have in this room. Any of them. You know? So we got some real tropical spiders in here which can tolerate a higher humidity, but is it absolutely necessary? as a maintenance thing, no, it's not. If we want to breed, then sometimes a spike in humidity can make a spider or encourage a spider to drop a sac. So we can use humidity in that respect. But as a general maintenance for that spider, even things like our metallicas, all of our pokies will survive perfectly well at 59% humidity. Perfectly well. Now, we have many spiders here that can cope. All our avics, they're absolutely fine. Now, often we hear about avics needing a very high humidity. And this is one of the things that's caused problems in the past because they have too much humidity and it wipes them out. Now, that often gets blamed on the fact that there's poor air circulation. Now, this is something that we've had them in sealed containers before and they've been perfectly fine. So I'm not 100% sure we're talking about circulation. So that's a different thing, but the humidity affects that circulation. So we need to look at that. These are all things to bear in mind. Now, if we come down and have a look at our giant white knee, just as an example, we've put another humidity gauge inside this enclosure. And as you can see, she's just sitting there and she's perfectly fine. Now, inside this enclosure, our humidity is 72%. So what's that? We've gone from 59% outside where I'm standing to 72%. So that's gone up 3%. Is that right? 13%. That's gone up 13% from within that enclosure. And the actual temperature in that enclosure is 73.4, whereas outside in the room is 77.4. So we've changed again there, haven't we? What have we lost there? 4 degrees? My maths is absolutely atrocious. Yeah, about 4 degrees. So, is that 4?
Yes.
Yes, 4 degrees. See, I'm having to think. Now, as we look in here, where that thermometer is actually her web mat where she molted out. And when she settled down for her molt and everything else, this is why this is all dried out, because we literally didn't do anything with her. We left her just to molt out. And with this girl, she takes a long time. Now, if we want to do anything with our humidity, in here, we've got 72%. Now, most of that is going to be coming from this water bowl, which is full up. Now, what we can do, if we want to lower the humidity in this enclosure, we can put a smaller bowl in. We can just go smaller. So we've got less surface area of water to evaporate. So the smaller the bowl, you're going to encourage your humidity to go less. Now, the other thing that we do here, you see we've got some plants in here. Now, we can literally just soak these, or, which is what is commonly done, everyone soaks their whole thing. So they get their sprayer, they've got their sprayer here like this, and they soak the whole thing. What we do here, because we don't want that spike in humidity, what we do is we put our thing down in here and we literally spray into our plant there. If we've got a bit of moss, we can give it over on the moss. There you go, look at that, she's hungry. She thought that was food. Isn't she beautiful? Absolutely lovely. Now, by doing this, what we've done is we've clumbed on there. Now, we might be able to actually demonstrate this by coming to the other side now because she's moved. We can put this over there. We've got a plant on this side as well. We can see that 73%. If we spray down into our plant, the chances are, what we're going to do, we're going to soak the soil down behind here. That's like a little soil bucket that's sitting in. Yeah, so we're going to give that a little bit of a thing. Now the chances are, when we close this up, we will give that a minute or two and we will see a difference. We're already, what, 73.3, so what were we, 72% humidity. So we dropped 1%, didn't we? I think it was 73 when we started. So when we've opened the doors, we've allowed some of it to come out. Now these have got a full mesh top on them as well, and this will help with that circulation, and it'll help with the evaporation, which is what we use it for. We use the mesh to get that humidity within the air inside the enclosure. But by doing it like the way we've done it, we spray down into our plants, we're not soaking the whole enclosure. If we spray the whole enclosure, we will spike humidity. and that will give us a much higher. You see now it's climbing up now, 73%. So what we do is we'll leave that like that, and we'll have a little look, and we'll see when we come back, we'll see where it's sitting and see whether it's changed very much at all. Now, another thing that we've got, another thing to be careful of when you're thinking about humidity is many of you guys, myself included, we keep our spiders in similar enclosures like this. So this will be a suitable enclosure for a juvie spider of some description. Doesn't really matter what it is, there's nothing in here at the minute. Now, when we look at this type of enclosure, this is where it all starts to change again, because humidity in one setup will react and work in one way, and there's different things on there that dictate how it evolves. When we come to an enclosure like this, we've got our normal water bowl there, and what we do is we just fill our water bowl up like that. And remember what we said about the geniculata enclosure? We had a big water bowl in there. This water bowl here would in terms be a big water bowl for this size enclosure. Now if this had a mesh lid on it, this would evaporate in no time at all. Because it's got a sealed plastic lid, and believe me, these holes here, you can see these holes, these are in the lid, and many people think, you know, this is enough. That is very little ventilation. You're not really getting any ventilation from this because everything, all your humidity is coming up. And what it does is it comes up and it forms water droplets on the top here, which in turn means that it's never getting out. It never evaporates. So inside here remains quite stagnant. Now, if we were to have any of our spiders in here, some of our juvie spiders in here, with this water bowl like this is fine, but we don't really want to be soaking the rest of it. Now, one of the things that we see online is people get their sprayer and they look at that and they give it a little spray. That's all it takes. That little spray like that, all of this water sitting on these edges is going to stay there. So what we do now is we put our lid back on and we have got a completely sealed environment. So this then goes back on the shelf, and a week later you pull it down to feed your spider, have a look, and it will still look pretty much like that.
Does that no matter how high the temperatures get?
Yes, it doesn't really matter, because what matters is the design of the enclosure that you're using. You're using a sealed box, and for a sealed box, the humidity, it can't evaporate, it can't get out. So you've locked it in. So what you have to think of, what I'm trying to get at, is you have to readjust your thoughts about gaining your humidity depending on what it is you want to keep. You know, in what enclosure you're using. It's a massive, massive thing. Now, if we had like a small spider, we could even go for a little tub like that, which is, all that is off of a sling pot. That's a lid off of a sling pot. And we could have put that in here, and you can see the difference straight away. Look at the difference. You see, this is quite deep in comparison to that. It's also a lot smaller than this one is. I mean, we can put it in there, and you can see there's a difference. If we drop that in, we push that down, you see how much more. That green lid holds probably over twice what this one would hold. So, in effect, if we were to keep our substrate relatively dry and just use the sling pot lid, you're going to get far less evaporation in this small box. So if you've got a dry species, that's going to work better for you. If you've got something that requires a little bit of dampness, it will still work equally well for that, because you've got a sealed box. The sealed box is the key. That is the answer to all of your questions. It's the fact that nothing can escape. Your spider can't escape, but nor can its environment. It cannot get out. Now, I don't know what we've got going on down there. Has that changed much?
75.
75. So we're steadily climbing. We are steadily climbing. And all we've done is water the plant. That's all we've done. Now, if we was to spray that tank, then you're going to get a huge spike because you've got water droplets all over the place. And what they're doing is they're filling the atmosphere. As they dry out, they're filling the atmosphere as quick as anything. And that will give that a really, really big spike. So what we're looking at in that situation, if we want to spray, we need to be aware of the enclosure that we're in so that we don't overdo it. If you want to spray in there to just increase it very slightly, then you just have to go a very, very small amount. And as we've seen with the water bowls, a very small amount of water can create a large amount of humidity. So it's very important that we understand how little amount of water can create a large increase in humidity. And this is one of the things. So what I'm trying to say is, if you want to, when we look at our humidity, look less at the numbers. Don't be worrying about 75, 80%, 60%, I mean, cool. I've even read some of them where they're like, it's got to be 62%. When on earth are you ever going to chase this down? You will spend a lifetime and give yourself a major headache. So forget about the numbers. These are broad spectrums that you can work within. Now, as we've seen there, we can go anywhere from 60% right the way through to 70, 75%, and pretty much everything within the hobby is going to be fine at them humidity gauges. They're not going to be any more. If you spray your tank, make sure that it is ventilated so that it can get out, because this is the big problem. If you spray it like we did this, it doesn't escape, and that is where your problems will lie, because it cannot get away. So there's no harm in spraying. You can spray, but make sure that your setup is designed to take that kind of attention, So with ours, we can get away with it in certain places because we've all got vented tops. Everything is mesh topped in this room. So all of our humidity does come out, and with the constant heat we have in the room, this also draws it up and it gives us a nice steady thing. And that's one of the reasons that holds our room at a steady humidity as well. Now in the summertime, our room will dry out. So our actual humidity within our room will drop down a little bit lower, but it won't go that much. It's not going to make that much difference, not enough that we would need to panic about it, because here in Britain, even our summers generally are quite humid. It's still quite humid air, so we can get away with it an awful lot. There is no need to get overly stressed about it, and the big things to remember is less is often more. So look at your enclosure. If you've got more of a sealed type enclosure, you want the very, very little. Even really dry species, we can look at this. This is a Harpectra pulchrips, the golden blue leg baboon. Now, as you can see in here, this has got really dry substrate. You can see that, yeah. This is really, really dry, even almost dusty dry. But the humidity in here is still going to be almost equivalent to the room, which is just about where she needs to be. Around about 60%, ideal for these. Same with our Balfouris. They do really, really well with this hike in the humidity within the room, but we're still only looking. This is the thing, I think, where people get confused is when you look at numbers. You look at, say, 55, 60%, and you think, oh, that's really low. That's nothing at all. I'm sweating, and it's 60% in here, and I am sweating. So, we're looking at it in the wrong way. Sometimes when a thing says sort of like 70 plus humidity, that's actually really, really quite high. So we need to control it. And by doing it in a really dry environment, so if you've got some of your like chalcodis and things like that, you want them around about 60%, you can just have a small water bowl. And if we want to spike it a little bit, get a little bit more, we can overflow that bowl. And that is all it will need. You will never need to physically spray this enclosure. It's just not necessary. You'll get it all from your water bowl. Right then. So I think we've hopefully made a little bit of sense about that. So the things to take away from this is you can spray your enclosure, just be aware of what type of enclosure you have. Does it allow you to spray? You know, I'm not a huge lover of spraying enclosures because I think people fall into a bit of a trap with it and it can unravel real quick. So make sure that your enclosure can dry out relatively quickly if you're going to spray. If you've got plants and things in there, try spot watering them and doing it that way. And then that way you're keeping a lot of that humidity down. You're not soaking the whole enclosure. And then you can use your water bowls. Make use of them. You know, they're not just a water bowl. We can do an awful lot with them. We change the sizes. It changes the humidity, the relative humidity within that enclosure. So it's something worth thinking about and something to play around with. Just play around with it. If you've got boxes like this, sealed tubs like these are another favourite among keepers. These pots as well. These are all things that will hold that environment intact because they've not got the ventilation that our open mesh topped enclosures have. So you look at many of these and you'll see most of these are dry. And all we do is we literally just water in a very small amount just to let them have a drink, or we fill them up. They've all got small water bowls. We just fill them up like that. And then we can do it like that. And it's more than enough. So just try and make your watering and your humidity, all of that, make it purposeful for the enclosure that you've got. Right. Well, I hope that made a little bit more sense. There is an awful lot that goes into humidity. It can be really quite the subject, and it's something that you can play around with an awful lot. But as a bare basic rule, follow what we've spoke about in this video, and you won't go far wrong. You will be fine. There are more we can do with it, but the more we learn, the better you'll become with it. So we'll start at the bottom and we'll work our way through. Right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And don't forget, be calm, be gentle, and love your spider. And I will see you soon, guys.